Imagine for a second that you are just walking through your neighborhood.
Right.
You take the exact same route to the grocery store or, I don't know, to the train station literally every single day.
Yeah, we all have that one route.
Exactly.
Right.
And on that route, there's a patch of land,
Yeah.
a dirt lot, basically an urban wasteland.
Oh, I know exactly the kind of spot you mean.
Right. It's fenced off, maybe a little overgrown, and it is entirely invisible to you
Yeah.
because you've just, trained your brain to completely tune it out.
Yeah, it just becomes background noise.
Yep.
Dead space.
Exactly. Dead space.
Uh,
But what if your community actually stopped tuning it out? Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking at exactly that scenario.
and it is a pretty incredible scenario.
It really is. So we have this fascinating stack of municipal blueprints, historical archives, and budget breakdowns sitting right here on the table today.
Lots of spreadsheets.
So many spreadsheets. But our mission today is to figure out how one Montreal neighborhood took an abandoned dirt lot and transformed it into, honestly, a masterclass in urban resilience.
Yeah, a real front line in the fight against climate change.
Right, and at the same time, a tribute to a totally forgotten local hero. So we are heading to the Sud-Ouest Borough of Montreal.
Specifically, the Pointe-Saint-Charles neighborhood.
Yes, to look at this brand new urban transformation that was just inaugurated on July 9, 2026. It's called Emily-Coonan Square. And, with a budget of $1.3 million, the city didn't just plant a few trees and, call it a day.
No, not at all. The documents in front of us paint a picture of a highly, highly strategic maneuver. And, this matters to you whether you live in Montreal or, frankly, halfway across the globe.
Oh, for sure.
Because this isn't simply a story about a park getting a quick facelift. It is a replicable blueprint.
Right.
We are looking at how a modern city can reclaim abandoned spaces, actually balance its municipal budget through these really clever corporate partnerships.
And simultaneously honor a piece of working-class history that had been entirely erased.
Exactly. It serves as this perfect case study in executing on complex, modern, urban demands without, just bankrupting the local taxpayers.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you can't just drop a brand new square into a historic, deeply rooted neighborhood like Pointe-Saint-Charles without giving it a distinct identity.
No, the community would reject it immediately.
Right, they'd hate it. The ground itself is physical, obviously, but the soul of the space comes from the name. So to understand the philosophy behind this square, we first have to understand the woman it's named after.
Emily-Coonan.
Yes. Looking at these historical archives, Emily-Coonan was an incredible figure who somehow just totally slipped through the cracks of history.
She really did. She was born in 1885 and lived until 1971, and she was a native of Pointe-Saint-Charles.
Born and raised.
Yeah. And what stands out in the historical record is that, she wasn't a politician, and she certainly wasn't an urban planner. She was an impressionist and post-impressionist painter. And this was a woman from a working-class Catholic background.
Which is huge context for that era.
Oh, absolutely, because in the early 20th century, the traditional pipeline to success in the art world was, it was dominated by wealthy, Protestant, upper-class men.
Yeah, very much a boys' club.
The establishment was a very closed loop. Yet she had this undeniable world-class talent that simply couldn't be ignored by that establishment.
Right. The records show she trained at the Conseil des Arts and manufactured to the Province de Quebec.
Quite a mouthful.
Seriously. And then she studied at the Art Association of Montreal. But the turning point really seems to be 1913. I mean, how does a working-class artist from a pretty gritty neighborhood end up rubbing shoulders with the international art elite?
The catalyst was this pivotal travel bursary from the National Gallery of Canada. They actually funded her to travel to Europe in 1913.
Wow.
And think about the timing there. She arrives in Europe on the absolute brink of the First World War.
Oh, right. The
Yeah.
cultural and political energy must have been just incredibly volatile.
Extremely. And that European trip deeply influenced her. She was immersing herself in the European Impressionist and Post-Impressionist movements over there.
Right.
And she took those radical, avant-garde techniques, the bold use of light, the really textured brushstrokes, and brought them all back to her art in Canada.
Fusing them with her own working-class sensibility.
Exact.
And she focused heavily on female subjects, too, which, that was a subtle defiance in itself at the time.
Yeah, very much so.
But her art today is it's almost like a time capsule locked away in museum vaults. Prestigious institutions like the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts and the National Gallery of Canada, they preserved the physical canvases.
Right.
But the city itself entirely forgot the environment that painted them. And there's this massive mystery attached to her name, right?
Oh, the 1933 exhibition?
Yes. In 1933, right at the peak of her talent, when you'd think her legacy was really cementing itself, she has her last exhibition.
And then nothing.
Then she withdraws. She steps completely away from the artistic community for the rest of her life, keeping her reasons entirely to herself. No one really knows why.
What's fascinating here is the city's deliberate choice to elevate her legacy almost a century later.
Right, because they couldn't have named it anything.
Exactly. When cities plan new developments, there is this enormous temptation to just cater to gentrification.
Oh, for sure.
Developers love slapping generic, luxury-sounding names on projects or, naming them after big corporate donors.
Like the Amazon Plaza or something.
Right, exactly. And that practice effectively erases the grit, the struggle, and the reality of the people who originally built the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So by bypassing the corporate names and choosing Emily-Coonan, this female pioneer from the exact streets this square occupies, the city is making a really powerful statement.
They are essentially saying the space belongs to the people who are actually from the area.
Taking that even a step further, they are taking a historical figure who withdrew from the public eye, whose legacy was effectively, erased from the neighborhood's memory, and placing her name permanently in the public square.
It's a huge shift.
It dictates who the city values and whose stories are actually worth preserving in the concrete and greenery of modern development.
That concept of permanence, taking something forgotten and really cementing it into the city's foundation, is actually the driving philosophy behind how the physical square itself was engineered.
Yes.
Because just as Emily-Coonan broke barriers in the art world, the blueprints show this new square was explicitly engineered to break down barriers in urban mobility.
It's a great parallel.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's look at the anatomy of this oasis. It sits strategically between St. Patrick's Street and the Lachine Canal.
And that geographical placement is so vital. I mean, the Lachine Canal is an iconic historic waterway in Montreal.
Beautiful area.
It's a gorgeous recreational corridor. But as we know, proximity does not equal access. If you have this overgrown, steep, unnavigable dirt lot sitting right between the residential neighborhoods and the canal.
Like it was before.
Exactly. The water might as well be on the moon for someone with mobility issues. The barrier to entry was entirely physical.
Yet, looking at the blueprints, they highlight a major focus on universal accessibility. And to ground that in reality, for you listening, they didn't just, slap a wooden ramp on a hill and call it a day.
No.
They completely regraded the earth. They softened the steep slope leading down to the canal and added this extensive handrail system. And, it sounds incredibly simple on paper, a slope and a handrail.
It is.
But that is the literal difference between an elderly resident or, say, a parent with a heavy double stroller being trapped on their street versus being able to safely access a massive public waterfront.
That right there is the core mechanism of inclusive design.
Yeah.
You don't design for the most able-bodied, athletic person in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You design for the most vulnerable. When you engineer a space so that a person using a walker can navigate it comfortably, you inherently make the space better, safer, and just more welcoming for everyone else.
That makes total sense. And moving through the design specs, they also went all in on active mobility.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking new, widened pathways, a dedicated bike lane to literally separate cyclists from pedestrians, which is always a good idea, and the infrastructure for a four-season electric bike station.
Right. And for those who don't know, BICS is Montreal's public bicycle sharing system.
Exactly. But building a four-season electric station, that's huge.
Right.
Because it means they're acknowledging that people don't just stop commuting because the temperature drops below freezing.
No, Montreal winters are tough, but people still need to get around. And acknowledging the climate reality is a massive part of this entire development.
Right.
The extensive greening of Emily-Coonan Square, the specific trees and the vegetation they chose, isn't just about municipal beautification. It's not just to make it look pretty.
No, it's functional.
Highly functional. It is an active mechanism in the Sud-Ouest's climate plan. The documents outline this big fight against the urban heat island effect.
Okay, let's break that down because heat island effect gets thrown around a lot in these urban planning documents.
It does.
What is the actual mechanism at work here? How does a park fix that?
Okay, so in a standard urban environment, you have these vast expanses of dark asphalt and concrete.
Right. Roads, parking lots.
Exactly. And during the summer, those materials absorb solar radiation. They trap the heat. essentially baking the surrounding neighborhood even after the sun goes down.
Ugh. Yeah, you can literally feel the heat radiating off the street at night.
Right. So by ripping out that barren lot and replacing it with a porous canopy of leaves, you fundamentally change the thermal dynamics of the space.
Okay.
The trees cast shade, obviously, which helps, but they also actively cool the air through a process called evapotranspiration.
Evapotranspiration.
Yeah, it's basically the trees releasing moisture into the air.
Oh, wow. Like they're sweating.
Sort of, yeah. It cools the surrounding air down. Furthermore, the porous green soil they installed absorbs and filters heavy rainfall.
Ah, so it manages stormwater runoff naturally.
Exactly. Instead of just overwhelming the city's sewer system during a huge storm, you are essentially building a municipal air conditioner and a giant sponge right into the fabric of the neighborhood.
A municipal air conditioner and a sponge.
Yeah.
I love that. I see the environmental logic completely.
Hmm.
But I have to push back on one piece of the civil engineering outlined in these documents.
Okay, what's that?
There is a whole section dedicated to traffic calming.
Yes.
And they specifically mentioned that temporary fixtures at the intersections of Island Street were transformed into permanent concrete curb extensions.
Right.
Now, as someone who analyzes municipal budgets, I have to ask,
Yeah.
if the city had already set up, temporary plastic pylons or those big planters, and they were successfully slowing down cars.
Which they were.
Right. So why rip them out? Why spend taxpayer money to pour permanent concrete if the temporary solution was already doing the job? It seems redundant.
It's a very common objection, actually, and the answer lies entirely in urban psychology and driver behavior.
Psychology? Really?
Yes. Temporary infrastructure like those plastic bollards, the painted lines, or those temporary planters you mentioned, it sends a specific psychological message to drivers.
Which is?
It says, this is an experiment.
Mm.
It looks fragile. And because it looks fragile, drivers often subconsciously ignore it. Or they resent it, honestly.
Like, I can just drive over this plastic thing if I really want to.
Exactly. And more importantly, pedestrians don't fully trust it. A painted line or a plastic pylon will absolutely not stop a 2-ton vehicle that drifts out of its lane.
So the lack of physical mass makes everyone anxious, the pedestrians are scared, and the drivers are careless.
Exactly the point. Moving from temporary fixtures to permanent concrete curb extensions is a total paradigm shift.
Okay.
The mechanism here is narrowing the driver's visual field. When a driver sees permanent concrete extending into what used to be a wide roadway, their brain naturally perceives a narrower path.
Which forces them to slow down.
Instinctively. They ease off the accelerator without even thinking about it. It permanently reclaims that asphalt for pedestrians and changes the actual geometry of the street forever.
Wow.
It signals to everyone that pedestrian safety is a fundamental right here, not just some pilot project the city might remove next year.
That is fascinating. And that brings me to the timeline of this permanence, because the speed of execution here is wild.
It is very fast.
The project logs show they started construction in mid-June 2025. They finished in June 2026 and inaugurated it in July.
1 year.
One single year. To completely re-engineer a public space, manage the water runoff, pour permanent concrete, and build four-season electric infrastructure.
It's impressive.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Well, $1.3 million question. How does the community actually get a city to pay for and execute something like this so efficiently?
Right, and this raises a really important point about how civic engagement actually functions in the real world. A lot of people assume city planners just wake up one day, look at a map, and decide to build a park.
Like playing SimCity.
Exactly. But the reality documented here is very, very different.
Yeah, according to the timeline, this did not happen overnight. The Sud-Ouest Borough initiated the project as a direct response to a 4-year participatory citizen approach.
4 years.
From 2019 to 2023, the citizens of Pointe-Saint-Charles were doing the grueling, deeply unglamorous work of demanding change.
The heavy lifting.
Right. We are talking about showing up to community centers on a random Tuesday night, sitting under awful fluorescent lights, arguing over zoning laws, and aggressively advocating for the reclamation of this specific non-space.
And that's what it takes. The residents recognized the gap in their neighborhood. They demanded that this dirt lot be turned into a focal point for social cohesion, a place where neighbors could actually stop and talk to each other rather than just, driving past it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And the city listened to that 4-year demand. But as you know, listening doesn't pay for concrete and landscaping.
No, it does not. And here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the financial blueprint for Emily-Coonan Square because it is brilliant.
The great model.
The total investment was $1.3 million. But it wasn't just a massive drain on the municipal tax base. The city created this synergy with a key corporate partner, specifically Hydro-Quebec.
Right. Hydro-Quebec stepped in through a very specific initiative they run called the Integrated Enhancement Program, or PMVI.
Okay, looking at the budget sheets, Hydro-Quebec provided nearly $370,000, specifically allocated for the square itself.
Right.
On top of that, they threw in over $375,000 just for the traffic calming and safety upgrades at the nearby St. Patrick intersection.
Which is a significant chunk.
So in total, the utility company covered around $740,000 of the surrounding infrastructure costs. That is well over half the entire budget.
Yeah, it is.
But I have to be a little skeptical here. Is this just a giant PR stunt? Why is a massive provincial utility company suddenly so interested in pouring $750,000 into a tiny local park?
It's a fair question. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you really have to look at the mechanics of utility infrastructure. The PMVI program is a voluntary commitment by Hydro-Quebec to improve the quality of life in communities that host its large-scale infrastructure. Think about power lines, giant substations, and all that industrial equipment. They create visual blight, and they absolutely disrupt local environments.
Yeah, nobody wants a massive power substation in their backyard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the utility recognizes that its operations have a tangible negative impact on these residential neighborhoods. Funding community beautification and safety like the square isn't just a PR stunt. It is a calculated mitigation strategy.
Interesting.
It is corporate social responsibility functioning exactly as it should, offsetting an industrial footprint with a direct civic enhancement.
Oh, I see. It functions almost like a landlord who voluntarily pays for high-end upgrades to your specific apartment because they know it increases the overall value and appeal of their entire building in the long run.
That's a great way to put it.
The city optimizes its municipal budget. They manage to deliver superior public amenities without bankrupting the local taxpayers.
And Hydro-Quebec fulfills its social responsibility mandate by offsetting its industrial presence in the area. It's a win-win.
It really is.
And the economic impacts ripple outward from there. When you beautify a gateway like this and provide a direct, universally accessible connection to a huge landmark like the Lachine Canal, you dramatically increase the residential appeal of Pointe-Saint-Charles.
Which solidifies the real estate values around the square.
Exactly. But the true return on investment isn't just measured in property taxes, it is measured in public health.
Oh, definitely.
By building infrastructure that actively encourages people to leave their cars behind and, use a dedicated bike path or just walk down to the canal, you are building community resilience.
Let's bring this all together, because we started today with an invisible dirt lot. A patch of urban wasteland that everyone in the neighborhood just walked past and ignored for years.
Decades, probably.
Decades. And through the grueling work of a 4-year citizen initiative, a $1.3 million budget, and a highly strategic financial partnership with Hydro-Quebec, that dead space was completely erased.
Transformed.
Yeah. In its place, the blueprints gave us Emily-Coonan Square, a permanent, green, universally accessible hub. It actively fights the urban heat island effect, manages stormwater, slows down dangerous traffic.
And serves as a lasting tribute to a local working-class feminist pioneer who the art establishment almost entirely forgot.
It's a remarkable synthesis, the physical engineering of the future resting perfectly on the reclaimed history of the past.
It really is beautifully done.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why carry this specific municipal case study with you today?
Because Emily-Coonan Square is no longer just an isolated success story. The documents establish it as the explicit collaborative model for all upcoming development phases in the Sud-Ouest Borough.
The city has essentially proven the concept.
Exactly. They have demonstrated that public spaces can be highly functional, environmentally adaptive, physically inclusive, and intimately connected to local working-class history, all achieved by leveraging corporate partnerships to protect the municipal coffers.
It sets a completely new standard.
It does. Anyone walking through their own city should look at this blueprint and realize that their demands for safer, greener, more historic public spaces are entirely feasible. The mechanics to achieve it already exist.
The blueprint is literally right here on the table. It proves that the dead spaces in our cities do not have to stay dead. Which, brings you back to Emily-Coonan herself.
Right.
We know she stopped exhibiting her art in 1933, She withdrew from the public eye entirely, right at the peak of her creative power.
It's still such a mystery.
It is. And for decades, her story was just locked away in the archives of a few museums, totally invisible to the people walking the very streets where she grew up.
Until now.
Until, nearly a century later, a community decided to literally engineer her name back into the earth of her hometown. So as you walk through your own neighborhood today, and you pass by those overgrown, fenced-off dirt lots, those invisible non-spaces you usually just tune out, take a closer look.
Yeah.
How many other hidden trailblazers are just waiting for their community to reclaim an abandoned lot, simply so they can finally tell their story?
Thank you for visiting. Catch up on all our latest news, features, and special editions, available in both audio and text formats. Enjoy our content on your smartphone, tablet, computer, or TV by visiting wikiresidence.ca. Your comments and feedback are always welcome.